So I'm sponsorship director at Slingshot. Slingshot Sponsorship is a sponsorship agency. We focus predominantly on events and various different platforms. I'll show you some of our clients in a second. My main role kind of fluctuates between these four different things. So first up, morning. First up is the strategy. So when we first engage with a client, the first thing we do is reevaluate their entire platform and their event. So we look at every asset they're offering sponsors, we look at what they're valuing that, we perform the valuations, create tiered packages, make sure that it's correct in terms of what they're communicating to the potential brands through their proposals. Second thing, of course, I have to do a lot of sales, the bit no one likes, but also the most important bit to actually get brands engaged. So we're going to talk a little bit about when you should start engaging them, how you should do it, how do you pick the right brand for you. Then obviously, when you've got the brand involved, it's all about the activation and actually delivering what you've sold to them, which is the key part in terms of creating long-term partnerships. And then, of course, like anyone in any agency or business, also have to get new clients in. So the only sales pitch from me is if you do want to chat about Slingshot, I'll stick around for half an hour, give you business cards and stuff. But also, if you just want to email me with some questions, always happy to give advice where I can. So just briefly to go through what we're about to go through in sort of the next 20 minutes. Quick introduction and a recap on, I guess, what this masterclass is about. We're going to talk about asset building, how we can identify what you've got to offer, utilizing your demographics and kind of increasing that value. The third part is about prospecting. So understanding how you can actually achieve long-term partnerships isn't necessarily just about writing in a contract. It's identifying what brand could be a long-term partner. Obviously the sales part, and then the task and the Q&A. So quick bit about Slingshot. I pretty much sum this up in my role because I cover all elements. We're all about commercialized marketing. So your typical sponsorship agencies are either activation or sales. We do both. So obviously the activation side is when we bring the brand to life through their sponsorship, whether that's with an F1 team or a small B2B conference. We also consult on events, so whether that's just looking at valuation on the assets, looking at future trends, where sponsorship is going, what assets you need to develop. Obviously, digital and social is a huge platform now with paid spend, so that's something you should all think about. And of course, our bread and butter is the sales side, which everybody hates, but it's so important, and I will keep reiterating that. Quick snapshot of a few of our clients. Obviously, we work with both brands and rights holders. Rights holders literally fluctuate between, we're working with London New Year's Day Parade this year, so if you're struggling with a hangover and want to get out, go and watch the parade. It's obviously on New Year's Day, and it's obviously in London. We also work with something called Extreme Tech Challenge, which is a global tech startup competition with Richard Branson, Silverstone, Universal Music on some of their festivals. And then here's a few of the brands that we've approached before and brokered deals with, B2C and B2B brands. So just a quick recap. There's a lot of text on here, but I'm just going to highlight the last bit. So the idea here is I'm going to try and help develop a new framework of thinking so you can identify which potential sponsors might be best for you, diversify what you're actually offering them in terms of your packages and your assets, and how to create more of a tailored offering. So outcomes, ideally, this is hopefully what you'll leave in an hour with, all this extra knowledge. First up, stimulate some ideas on how to generate longer-term sponsors and drive larger revenue. Create some new processes, assisting in the creation of more compelling offerings. Understand what will increase the value of your sponsorship. Number 4, identify better prospects who have long-term objectives. And number 5, tailor your approaches to meet their needs creatively. So first question. So we just do this by a raise of hands. It's all about long-term partners, this whole session. So who here has successfully had a sponsor sign on for more than 1 year? Hands up, yes. Awesome. Cool. It can be repeat. So this isn't they're signing on for 3 years. This might be that they've renewed after the first year and they've continued to renew. Everyone had renewals? If not, no, that's fine. I won't make you put your hands up. Good. Okay, cool. That's one thing we're going to touch on as well. I think some people think a long-term partner is maybe just having someone who signs a 3-year deal, but it's not. If you get them to renew year on year, that's still a long-term partner, but it's difficult to make them do that. So we'll go through how to make that a bit easier. So first up, we're going to talk about uncovering more assets and identifying your key ones. So before thinking about that long-term multi-year deal, you need to understand exactly what a brand's looking for when they're thinking about a long-term partnership. So the difficulty is, in any long-term partner, there are so many factors that impact their decision-making process. So some things you need to think about in terms of what they're looking for. First up is you need to think about what their vision is as a brand. So marketeers and people representing brands aren't one-year cyclical people, okay? Say a new marketing director comes in, they're looking at the next 3-4 years. So you need to understand where they're trying to take their brand, what people they're trying to target, sales they're trying to increase, are they launching a new product, are they going into a new market? Second is how professional your event comes across. If it's not a well-oiled process, then that will impact negatively, of course, on the brand's perception of you. You need to also communicate where you're taking your event or your platform. Obviously, if you're looking to take it abroad or to develop it into new markets, that might fit really well with the sponsor's objectives too. Fourth thing, does it align? Obviously, there has to be alignment in terms of the sponsor and your platform. The fifth one, and this is a difficult one, is likability. I don't mean like Louis Walsh likability vibes, but I'm talking about sponsors actually care about who you are as well. So people will sponsor with people that they actually like. So you need to come across really well when you're pitching. And number 6, which is what we'll talk about now, is what you're actually offering them. So I put a big cross through this because I want to just make sure that you understand sponsorship is not about a logo anymore. So if you're leading with branding and your logo will be on our marketing, yes, that's important, but no sponsor will do that anymore. You need to actually give them an asset that really resonates with what they're trying to achieve. The only way to do that is to understand what the brand wants, which we all talk about. So, got to identify the key assets. So in terms of the actual assets that you offer, this is essentially your shopping basket, right? So therefore, we need to tailor your approach when sending out your proposals so that these proposals only communicate the key assets. So if you're going to a brand and you understand their objectives are generating leads, for example, at your event, just talk in the proposal about how you're going to do that. Don't start talking about how you're going to raise awareness of the brand. So next question, this is a long one, but obviously it would have worked in a poll. But anyway, I want you to put your hands up in terms of what you feel your event's most valuable asset is, okay? So I'm just going to roll through, just stick your hands up when you're ready. Number 1, branding, okay? Number 2, marketing integration. So that's integrating into your own marketing comms, okay? Content creation, cool. PR, okay, event integration, booth space, yep, cool. Social media, so them on your own channels, okay. Scheduled meetings, good. B2B events by any chance? Yep. Data, speaking opportunities, cool. Anything else? I covered it all, good. So truth is, there isn't necessarily one answer, obviously. The reason I've said that is that it completely depends on the brand, right? So you don't necessarily, you'll have a stronger asset in terms of value and how much the value is in terms of an actual price point. But the idea here is that there isn't one answer. You need to understand what the brand wants. So today's task, we'll get towards this at the end. I'm going to basically make you represent an exhibition or an expo or an event. And I want you to come up with all the assets you can possibly think of, okay? The idea with doing that is the more that you offer a brand, the more it will resonate with them, and the more, the wider scope of the target market you'll have as well. We'll go through exactly what you need to do towards the end. So the next few slides will kind of help you with that. So this might be a time where you want to jot a few things down. When you're thinking of assets, I always refer to the 3 A's. So the first one is the actual asset itself. So this is where we're identifying what that individual asset is, okay? I'll give you an example on the next page. The second one is the audience, so who's actually going to engage with that asset or the actual specific touch point of how your brand can, or how the brand can be promoted to your audience. And the third one is obviously the activation, so how are you going to utilize that asset to make sure that they achieve their objective. Quick example, very, very simple example. For instance, one tweet is the asset. The second part is the audience, so how many followers you have on Twitter or your reach. And the third part, which is the activation, is what you actually put in those, I think it's 240 characters now, what you actually put in those characters, okay? So that's the example we need to work through. Next up, how do you actually uncover these assets? So when we're going to do this task later, this is a good place to start. First up, what are the relevant touch points that a brand can be promoted? So this is, you've got to really think from both the event side and the brand point. Second part, the location, the venue itself. Can you do anything with that? Where can you put up booths or promotion space? Your own social media channels, your website, digital elements, any face-to-face opportunities to B2B events, put their hands up with scheduled meetings, which is perfect. Advertising as well, any advertising that they can link onto. Media partner leverage, that also includes trade press. What I mean is if you're taking out advertising or promoting, say, through timeout campaign or a trade press, can you integrate the brand into that? Can you get perhaps a full-page advert agreed in your own partnership? Any communications you're putting out, whether that's in, say, newspapers or digital advertising again, and of course, event presence is probably a key one for any brand. So I'm just going to run through a quick couple of ideas in terms of how to actually increase the value of your assets. So first up, I'll speak about B2B. So obviously, the key reasons someone will sponsor a B2B are pretty much threefold. There are, of course, a lot more, but we'll kind of pick on the top three. Third one is lead generation. They want to get new business, right? Second one, speaking, showcasing that they're a key executive in their company. It's about proving their worth, essentially. It's through content as well, thought leadership. And third one, awareness. Although I speak about branding as not a super key thing, of course it actually is a key element if you're trying to, I guess, showcase you're better than a competitor. So how do you actually do that? First one, increase the prospect pool. Yes, get more people to come to your event, but also can you really nail down who the people are coming to your event? So rather than just having 500 people coming, have, say, 100 CEOs, much more niche, and it'll be better for those people if you've got decision makers in the room, right? Second one, opportunities to demo a product or potentially sell on stage, whether that's organically or non-organically. Morning. Third one, marketing integration, so integration into your own marketing or the events marketing, and then, of course, I've already mentioned it, media partners and trade press. If you're looking about B2C events, so the predominant reason a brand's trying to get involved is, again, all of this comes down to really making money for a brand, and what their ROI is usually sales. To help that with a B2C brand, it's eyeballs on product. So how can you increase their awareness, get access through media, make people more aware of the brand, or maybe even a specific product, so sales points, direct sales on site. Third one, content creation and storytelling as well is super important for brands now. It's very much less about just sticking a logo out there. There's so many brands that compete for the same thing now. It's about creating a story that people will actually resonate with. So how can you help them do that, whether that's accessing your event or people in it? So with B2C, again, media partners, increasing your own audience, whether that's through social media, website, digital, event integration, and of course, co-content creation as well. But you need to make sure you absolutely know your demographic. So it's really, it's fine in saying that you've got 1,000 people come to your event, but no brand will sponsor you unless you can tell them exactly who those 1,000 people are. So of course, when you're using, there's so many great apps out there now that when you sign up to an event, you'll fill in a few bits of detail, your job title. If you've been to any event, you've done this before in filling out your registration. Make sure you've got that all hooked up. Other ones to help you do this, social media analytics, Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, you can understand who your online audience looks like really easily using Google Analytics as well. The second part, Eventbrite and Ticket Fairy. If you're using ticketing websites, Ticket Fairy is a brilliant one that we use quite a lot. I don't get a commission from them for saying that. But they're amazing in terms of their back end can really dissect down into male versus female, what ages they are, types of level of income, what kind of jobs they've got, where they are geographically. The more detail you can show a brand, the more targeted you can be in finding out who that brand is and whether your audiences cross over. And of course, WordPress and MailChimp, then you can start to look at open rates of your e-newsletter, click-through rates, types of people receiving that as well. So make sure you really know your demographic. So the key thing that we've just talked about there, and I'll just kind of recap, is you need to understand exactly who you have and your assets, and also offering everything possible, increase that value, and then the brands will start to be more integrated and more involved and kind of like what you have to offer, okay? So once you've got that platform set up, now you need to understand if you're going to get long-term partners, how do you figure out who they are? So importance of research. So reasons you actually prospect, okay? So the objective as a rights holder is to drive value to your partners and achieve their objectives, okay? The whole point of sponsorship really is to under-promise and over-deliver. Sometimes that might mean getting a brand in for less than you want them to pay, But if you get them as a sponsor, then next year you make them pay more. But that first year, really, you want to make sure that they're kind of paying a lot less and the ROI is a lot more. Okay? So how does this relate to creating long-term partners? First up, when you're actually going out and trying to find who these prospects are, potential brands, it will essentially mean you need to understand their objectives. I'll teach you how to do that in a second. Second up, you need to find that sales hook. So you need to find which are your key assets for that brand. Third up, develop long-term relationships. The best people in sponsorships are usually the friendliest ones. If you generate a relationship with a brand that might not sponsor you, but over time, you can send them content, you can show them video highlights of what your event looked like, you can get them to come to the event without being a sponsor, become their friend and kind of get them involved. The whole point someone would sponsor is because they're buying into your vision as well. The best sponsors are probably people that you could call up and just ask for a drink, okay? You probably made friends with them. It's all about generating relationships with these people. And the fourth one, which I think a lot of people kind of shy away from sometimes, is ask. People who are marketers are more than happy to talk about what they're doing with their brand because it's almost a chance to show off what they do as a job, right? So ask them what they're trying to do. Ask them what their objectives are. Ask them why they're thinking about sponsoring your event, and also what their expectations are versus the reality. The more you ask, the better your sponsorship will be. So first question in this prospecting bit. On average, how long do you spend looking at a brand before approaching? So in terms of actually researching a prospect. So you've Googled them, you've looked on maybe an aggregator, you found, I don't know, Coca-Cola, you look through them and you try and find out who they are, and then you pick up the phone, you send them an email, you send them a LinkedIn approach. So I just want to understand how long you look. So hands up if it's 0 to 15 minutes. Okay, 15 to 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, 45 to 60, cool, over an hour. I just Google relevant companies and call and email them. Okay, fine. In terms of what I personally think, you should be really doing over an hour per brand. And if you think that's too much, think about it. How many sponsors do you realistically get a day? If you spent a whole day researching a brand, then you set up a meeting with them at the end of that day. In 2 days you had a meeting, that's a pretty decent week, right? If you're just putting down 50 potential sponsors, giving them a call, sending them blanket emails, generic proposals, same email to everyone, all you're changing is the brand name and the person, that's not developing a relationship with someone. Okay, if they're going to give you £10,000, you need to make them want to give you £10,000. So you need to spend the time to research them before you go and approach. Hello. I was recently on a trip where there was a couple of sponsors there, and I asked a sponsor what they want to see from people approaching, right? So the first thing that she said to me, she says, every approach I get is the exact same. They try to guess my objectives and then send through a generic proposal. She wants people to develop relationships with her, understand what they're trying to do, tell me what they are trying to do, so what you're doing with your event, and only then can they see if it aligns. So, a bit of a difficult person to get through, that gatekeeper. So how do you actually understand what they want without guessing? First thing, you can guess, but you can go with an educated guess. So if you think about a brand, typically, especially if there's a new marketing director, that's probably the best time to approach if you see that, because they want to know what's new out there. They want to do what's different to every other brand out there. So first thing, does it look like they're releasing a new product? Have you seen that advertised somewhere? Have you seen a billboard with that on? Are you signed up to their e-newsletters where they're promoting this new product or service? Are they tapping into a new region or market? Does it look as though a new marketing director has taken over, which I've already said previously? Have you seen their brand appearing more often in the media? So are they advertising even more? Or simply ask them. So a few platforms that give you really good insights in terms of what brands are trying to do. Some are more expensive than others. Pearl Finders is an amazing website that basically they call up marketing directors and interview them, asking them what they're trying to sponsor, what they're looking to do. A lot of the time it's sport, but sometimes it's various different events. News articles, trade press, again, if you're in a specific industry, make sure you're signed up to every piece of communications about the industry. Say it's IoT or an AI conference or something like that. Online, of course, Google Alerts is an amazing piece that will just send through news articles about anything. So whether you have, again, same industry or a specific brand. Then you've got Financial Times, Campaign, any kind of news article like that. So good few platforms to find out what a brand actually wants. Best option, get face-to-face. Go and ask them. Ask them out for a coffee. Tell them you've got something really cool you want to talk to them about. Take them for lunch. Anything to get in front of them, and then that's when you can really start to influence their decision. If you call up someone or send them a blanket email, they're not going to make a decision quickly. You've got to really help push them in the right direction. So I'm going to take you through something that we use, which is how we get aligned with specific brands. So sometimes it's not that easy to identify if a brand might be relevant to you. You also have to understand that it's your decision whether you take that sponsor on board, okay? Because that sponsor also impacts your own event. So you have to think from both sides. So what we do is we created something called a scorecard. It basically gives key criteria down one side and rates it out of 10. The reason being is then you can push a brand up against that and see where it factors in terms of percentage of alignment. So obviously you'll have a copy of this. This is an older version of the presentation. I don't think it's updated, so I will have the new one sent over to you anyway. But essentially, imagine this is a B2B tech event. So the key criteria down the left-hand side. So this is what you need to look for in terms of a brand. So what your perfect brand would be. So are they an industry leader? So are they seen to be a leader in a specific industry? Do they have any visible key opinion leaders? So if you're offering speaking opportunities, you want the best speakers at your event as well. Is there a crossover with the event? Have they been a sponsor before? Previous sponsorship, have they previously sponsored an event? Do they have offices in the UK, for example, if your event's in the UK, therefore are they actually marketing in the UK? You then rate the importance out of 10 and give it a value. So obviously 7 out of 10 is 0.7, 6, 0.6. Next slide is a little bit more complicated, but I'll go through it. So for example, I've done Mitsubishi. So what industry? Are they an industry leader? Yes, they're the top 100 global innovators for this B2B tech event. Do they have key opinion leaders? Yes, their VP is a key opinion leader. He does a lot of thought leadership, writes a lot of white papers. Is there a link to the event itself? Have they previously sponsored something? Office location and notes. What you then do is take the number across the top, which is, if you look, is 1, 0.7, 0.6, which I'll go back one slide, is those ones down the right-hand side. You then score the brand out of 10 across each, times those numbers together. So obviously 1 times 8 is 8. You then get a number. The previous slide added up to 30. So this one, 22.5 out of 30, is actually 75% in terms of alignment. If it's 75% or more, pick up the phone straight away, give them a call. It's probably a good opportunity for them, okay? If it's lower, then probably put them towards the back of the list. It does take a lot of time to do this, and I appreciate that not everyone will have time to do this. But if you feel like you need to understand if a brand aligns with your event perfectly, this is a good place to start. Then, of course, if you're approaching, you need to create a tailored opportunity rather than just sending a blanket email. So, number one, only use assets that are relevant to the brand, which I mentioned earlier. So if you're actually approaching a brand and it's all about thought leadership, only talk about how you can increase their thought leadership, whether that's through blogs or content on your website, posts on social promoting that individual. Second part, showcase some examples, i.e. what content you're going to use, how they can integrate into marketing. If you're talking about branding, show them what branding looks like at your event. Number 3, communicate the demographic to them and how it's going to generate sales. So you need to understand exactly who your people are and why it's beneficial to them. Whether it's just awareness or alignment, it doesn't matter, but you need to talk about why. And the 4th one, showcase how you can create long-term activations. So typically your event is, 1 or 2 days? You have an entire year to create a partnership with them, with regular pieces of content. So don't just focus on the event itself, focus on what you can do around that as well to bolster that partnership. So the last bit before we go into the task is sales. So obviously this is the important part. So first up, don't worry, again, I won't go into sales training, we can save that for another day. I want to know how long before your event or how long before you need that sponsor do you actually start approaching them? Okay, so hands up again if you start approaching them a month before your event. That makes me happy, good. 2 to 3 months, okay, 3 to 6, 6 months to 12 months, over a year, okay. So my opinion, and I put 14 months, but what I mean is, If you're approaching a brand for the first time, they've never sponsored your event, they don't know who you are, why would they sponsor you? They've never seen what you actually do. So my opinion is, unless you've already got that relationship with them, fine, then you can work on it year on year. You want to get them to actually come to your event before sponsoring it. Show them how great it is, show them what current sponsors do, show them the content that you create for them. Bring them along to the event, wine and dine them, but kind of just show them what it's all about. Then you start to have a conversation about how your event can help them achieve their own objectives. If you can't do that, and it's too far gone, then send them videos, send them images, show them what it's all about, get testimonials from your own sponsors. Because you're not going to buy something you've never used before or never really seen in action, okay? So again, it gives them a chance to see your event. No one's going to commit to a long-term partnership without having seen it first. Also provide some case studies. And the most important thing is you need to develop a relationship with them. You need to be able to call them up at any time and go, actually, I've had a really great idea. How about let's do this together, okay? Again, you really need to discuss the vision of your event, especially if you're looking to renew that partnership. So say they've been involved for a year and you want to increase their sponsorship. The whole point that they're going to do that is if you're building on your event, okay? If it stays pretty stagnant and it's the same year on year, then it's pretty difficult for them to renew, okay? You want to encourage them to do that.
Kieran, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Previous slide. If you've never done an event before, you've got nothing to show them. How do you get around that?
You talk about that. So if you've never done it before, the difficult part is, especially if it's a B2B one, which I'm assuming it is, the difficulty is they're going to want to know who's coming. If you can't do that and show them exactly who's coming, you can show them who you're inviting and who is likely to attend, right? So you'll send them a list of, I'm inviting CEOs from this, this, and this. Then you can start to talk about the capacity of the event is, say, 500. Then you talk about all the assets you've got. So when you're speaking to the sponsor, if they can't see it, you can tell them that they're going to have a chance to speak on stage. Tell them why that's good, because there's 500 CEOs in the room. Their brand's going to be in front of their target audience, so it's a chance to generate sales. Maybe you've created a social media following. Maybe you've got media partners. Then you have to kind of take a step back and just talk about everything you've got to offer them. So all of what I'm saying is in an ideal world. If you do a tenth of this, you'll be more successful in getting sponsors anyway. But this is obviously if you've got 12, 14 months. I totally appreciate that that's fairly unrealistic sometimes. So honestly, you could get sponsors a month out. You could get it 3 months out. But if you start to do a bit more of this, then it'll make you more successful with it. Budgets. Another reason that I try and go at least a year in front of an event is you hit the key budget periods. So in terms of sponsorship, the key budget periods that you want to be talking to a brand are September to December. That's because they're planning for the next year, okay? So right now is a great time to talk to sponsors if your event's next year. The other period is between February and May. Again, a lot of people's year ends. Brands have really cyclical budget setting periods that variant. So some people might be January to December, some might be April to April. If you go to people like IBM, some of the big tech firms, they work on quarterly. So as long as you're 2 quarters out, you can be 6 months in advance. You'll also find that some of the people you're trying to speak to about sponsoring, they might have, say, 20 grand left in their budget. They just want to get rid of it. If a marketing director doesn't spend budget, their budget's reduced next year. Marketeers want more budget, so try and find out if they've got any left over. They'll probably just chuck it at you, which is always a nice feeling. Okay, so we're going to go into the task.